Well, a very good afternoon or good morning to you wherever you are dialing in today to our Coaching Cafe. We've just been checking the chat and there's people dialing in from all around Australia. We're waiting for our international guests to come on the line as well. My name is Natalie Ashdown from the Open Door Coaching Group. Welcome to the Coaching Cafe today where we are talking about how leaders build engagement. And when I wanted to think about building engagement and talking to leaders, I thought let's invite back our guest speaker, Andrew Figtree. Figgy, welcome back to the Coaching Cafe.
Thanks, Nat. Great to be here.
Excellent. So before we begin, let me acknowledge the traditional owners and the custodians on the lands on which we're all meeting today and their continuing connection to the land, the waters and the communities of Australia and the lands from all around the world, wherever you might be joining us today or listening to us live on your favourite streaming service. We pay our respects to them, to their elders, past, present and emerging, and elders from Indigenous communities from around the world.
Hey, thanks, Nat. I guess in the lead up to Remembrance Day tomorrow, I'd just like to recognise all those veterans who are currently serving, who've previously served, and those who gave their lives while serving for Australia, lest we forget.
Thank you, Figgy. Lest we forget, thank you for that acknowledgement. So in terms of today's agenda, just a very quick overview for you, and then I really am keen to get into our conversation. We have been talking over the last couple of weeks about the Gallup State of Australian and New Zealand workplaces, the report that came out for 2023, and in particular that engagement in our workplaces is really low. So today I wanted to talk about how do we actually build engagements. That's why we've welcomed Figgy back. As a former group captain of Australian Air Force, commander, looking after many people, your years of experience, Figgy, we want to tap into and really talk about how leaders are building engagement and how you might have done it and your thoughts and reflections. So for those of you that are new to the Coaching Cafe, as I say every week, welcome. We're all about creating a community, creating great shared learning experiences and having thought-provoking conversations, which I'm looking forward to today. And of course, if you are a regular, welcome back. We love coming together every Friday. And if you're a regular listening to our podcast, we've got hundreds and hundreds of downloads. Thank you so much for supporting us, whichever way you're listening to our Coaching Cafe today. We really appreciate your support. If you are here also because you're after your ICF CCEs, please tap into those at the end of the session. So, Figgy, we've been talking about workplace engagement. We've been particularly concerned that engagement in our workplaces is only 20%. We have a really significant number of quiet quitters. And there's a number of reasons why people are actually quiet quitting. Things like lack of recognition, managers aren't approachable, people want to learn and they can't learn, or there's no autonomy, lack of respect and values misalignment. And I'll put up all your lessons at the end of our session. I've got one particular slide to show everybody as a summary. But perhaps I can kick off the conversation with you. One of the reasons that people are lacking engagement in the workplace is that managers are unapproachable. And you've been talking with me about building engagement by being authentic and the vulnerability of the command. So perhaps I could kick off with that conversation with you. You can tell us more about your thoughts around that. And I know you've done a lot of research with Brené Brown and Simon Sinek and the like. So I'm really keen to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, look, I guess firstly, just thanks for the opportunity to be on today's Coaching Cafe. I think this is a wonderful initiative. And, you know, I think that 67% of people that are quiet quitting, that are sitting there just taking the paycheck and not really engaged with their work, and possibly spending, from what the survey says, quite a bit of time actually looking for other jobs, which as a leader in an organisation is definitely not what you want your team to be doing. You want your team to be engaged. You want your team to be bringing up ideas. You want your team to be communicating and to working towards the goals that you're trying to achieve. As you said, I look. One of the great things about these opportunities is that I get a chance to go back and dust off a few cobwebs and go and look at some of the engagement research that's out there. Some of the stuff about leadership, as you mentioned, got me back into Brené. And if people only take one thing out of today, go and read Dare to Lead by Brené Brown. Wonderful, wonderful book, and a really talented researcher. So yeah, I think if I could just kick off overarching over all of this today is Brené's definition of leadership. She says that leadership is not about titles, status, and power over people. Leaders are people who hold themselves accountable for recognizing the potential in people and ideas, and who have the courage to develop that potential. And I think that really captures not just us as leaders, but us as coaches as well, because as coaches, we want people to be the best that they can be. So you wanted me to have a quick chat about vulnerability of command. And I think vulnerability is really key. And it is definitely one of the things that Brené talks about. Interestingly, I kind of came to this conclusion and didn't even know who Brené Brown was. It was just one of those things that I understood or came to understand through a couple of commands, or 3 commands, including one in Afghanistan, that if you're not vulnerable and authentic to your people, then they won't trust you, they won't follow you, and they won't believe in what you believe. So one of the things that around that I think you need to be honest to yourself and to your values is that vulnerability, to actually trust the fact that the people above you are approachable, and you can go to if you've got a good boss and a good leader, then you should be able to go to them and say, hey boss, I don't know what to do here. But you should also have been able to have that conversation with your team. Hey team, I don't have the answers. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that we don't need to solve all the problems all the time. One of the things that I think I came across in doing a little bit of background research on leadership is I went back and watched the Simon Sinek TED Talk. 63 million views, probably one of the most popular TED Talks ever. It's around how great leaders inspire action, and he particularly pulls out the example of the Wright brothers and a guy called Samuel Pierpont Langley. Samuel Pierpont Langley, chair at Harvard, he worked at the Smithsonian, fantastically connected, $50,000. This is in the early 1900s, 1902, 1903. So $50,000 is a lot of money, and a big staff to solve the problem of flight. The Wright brothers, in short, they thought that if they could solve this problem, it would change the world. They were driven by a cause, they were driven by a purpose, they were driven by a belief. And the people that followed them, the people that helped them, the people that worked with them, they believed in what they believed. And that was probably the reason. I think that's the reason that the Wright brothers were successful, and why we've never heard of Samuel Pierpont Langley, because he was doing it for accolades, he was doing it for fame, and the people that were working for him, they were doing it for a paycheck. They were the quiet quitters of today. So I think we need to kind of understand that if people don't believe what you're believing and what the purpose is that you're striving for, then they won't follow you. They won't trust you. They're just cashing in and taking the money, doing the work. So I think we need to, as leaders, we need to understand that people want to have purpose too. They want to align that purpose. And as leaders, I think it's up to us to try and help them align that purpose, that person's purpose with the members of our team, their purpose, their individual purpose, how that aligns. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about strengths, and I think that's probably one of the areas where we can do that. If anyone is a little bit unsure about how you can work out your purpose, great TED Talk by, I think it's a guy called Adam Jakovich or something like that. It's Your Life Purpose, or Your Purpose in 5 Minutes. Another great TED Talk. And that's something that, it might just be something that you can get everyone to do, and then have a bit of a discussion about it. Creates that little bit of vulnerability, creates that, hey, that's really interesting, I didn't know about you, that about you, and builds that trust within your team. Sorry, long answer, short question.
No, absolutely. Figgy, I just love it how we ask you a question and set you to just share everything. So thank you so much. And you're absolutely right. One of the ways that managers can build engagement, and managers are responsible for this, is make sure people are aligned to the purpose. Lack of clear goals, lack of respect, and values misalignment. That's what's coming out of the research as to why people are disengaged. So thank you for bringing that up. And definitely, you talk a lot about leading by example. You've led commands throughout your Air Force career. And you talk about building engagement by practicing leadership, not followship. And I like this as well. You said not like ship. So but you've got ideas about people not feeling part of the mission, those kind of things. So if they're not part of the mission, if they don't feel aligned, we're not going to have engagement. So what are your thoughts about that as well?
I guess just like a little clarification there, like the leadership lesson that I think you're going to show at the end. I'll do a little open door coaching plug. It was one of the elements of the coaching culture modules, and fantastic series if you're trying to get a coaching culture within an organization, and also just to help you reflect on some of the other leaders such as Gail Kelly and is it John Milliman? John Millman?
Yeah, Jonathan Millen.
Yeah. Wonderful leaders and wonderful leadership lessons. The what you'll put up is that I talk about practicing leadership, not followership or likership. When I say not practicing followership is actually important as a leader as well, because you need to be able to show followership of your bosses, and you need to have actually understood what it's about. But what I'm trying to say there is don't just be one of the herd. You need to actually not do things because that's the popular choice, or because it will make you feel good because people like you. That's not what being a leader is about. Sometimes you do have to make hard decisions, but when you make those hard decisions, then they should be made through communication. And that's why, going back to what you were talking about why people don't feel attached or motivated or aligned, part of it is communication. And one of the things that definitely came out when I was looking at my research was that people don't feel they can talk to their managers. They don't feel that those managers and those leaders are approachable. So yeah, communication is absolutely key. It's really hard to communicate too much, but it's pretty easy not to communicate enough. And if you don't know, or if you can't be saying something because it's a commercial in confidence, because it's a need to know, because it's a plan that your boss has said, I don't want this getting out, then you need to talk a little bit more broadly, or tell people why you can't tell them. Just say, look, I'm not able to tell you exact details at this point in time due to commercial sensitivities. It'll come out in the next week or so. But what I would need you to know, or what we need to be working on is, and whatever it might be. So engage them, inform them, and then carry them along for the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we need to stop and reflect as leaders also about how we're enabling communication. So we know that communication as coaches, we know that communication is linked to engagement. But I think what I really appreciate about what you're saying, Figgy, is actually stopping and reflecting as leaders on what are we doing in that regards to actually build communication. Where are we able to do that? A really great reflections.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the important things about communicating, and what was brought out in some of those engagement research reports that I was reading, was that communication's got to be a two-way street. It's not just I stand on the dais and talk, and then everybody else listens, and then they communicate back to me. It's absolutely 360-degree feedback. So that doesn't mean that everyone gets to walk into the boss's office and tell him that this is absolute rubbish. But they should feel confident that they could do that, or at least that they can do it through their management or their chain of command, whatever sort of structure you're talking about. And I think that if, as a leader, you think that you're there, going back to Brené's definition, it's not about being on, up on the pedestal. It's actually being down in the bullpit, and actually having that vulnerability and that ability to listen and that ability to communicate. One of the great leaders I've had the privilege of working for a long time ago, back in the 90s when I was flying F-111s, a guy called Dave Dunlop. And one of his amazingly good abilities was that he would give you his time. Like, I was 5 ranks junior to him, and I'd say, "Hey, boss, what's going on here?" And if he didn't understand, he'd give you this much. If he didn't understand, he'd give you a bit more. He'd give you a bit more, and so he had that ability to give you the picture. And if you disagreed, you could say, "Well, I don't understand," or I disagree for these reasons, and he would explain. So I think time and communication and willingness to actually, I think Brené calls it like rumbling in vulnerability, or it's rumbling with ideas. And I think that once we actually close off ideas and become dictatorial or just pure directive, then that's where we lose people. That's where they become disengaged, because they actually want to be able to go, hey, that's a great idea, or I see where you're going with this. Give me some time and I'll come up with some ideas. These are smart people. We have great people working for us, and they have solutions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that then speaks to the next reason why people are feeling disengaged. They don't have autonomy. So you talk about stop solving the problems all the time, and
Yeah.
I loved your other comment around don't let perfect get in the way of being good. But one of the reasons why people do become disengaged is there's so many ranks, so many hierarchies, so many things getting in the way of people having autonomy. So what are your thoughts about that, Figgy?
Yeah, look, there's two areas I'd like to have a bit of a chat about. The first one we'll have a chat about is stop being the one to solve problems, and the other one is about don't let the perfect get in the way of the good. I guess on stop being the one to solve problems, and that just drives right to the heart of coaching and being a good coach, is to actually get people to come with solutions, to challenge them, to encourage them to be curious, and to give them some autonomy to go off and actually have a think about how they're going to solve problems. How much easier as a leader or a boss is it if someone comes to you and go, hey boss, I've got some bad news. This is not working, or this is failing, or we're not going to be able to deliver this on time. However, I've looked at this and here's how I can see we can solve this problem. How much, like as a leader, you go, great, crack on, run with it. And it just releases your time to actually do some of those other things, to be get into the communication, to be authentic, because part of being authentic also is actually knowing your people and being down, getting out and about, and talking to them, and knowing what they're up to, knowing their struggles, knowing what they're bringing to work, because sometimes they've got a bag full of trouble that is happening outside the workspace. So understanding that, appreciating that, and just it doesn't always have to be the full-on mental health conversation. It might just be how's things going. And people appreciate that. So in stop being the one to solve problems, I think that's where we can really release people's creativity. I don't know if you caught Australian Story on Monday. It was about Libby Gore, who was aka Elle McFeast in the late 90s and into the early 2000s. Anyway, she was a radio presenter in Melbourne on one of the local ABC channels there. In February 2009, when all of Victoria was burning. And the station executive who assigned all the different jobs, he was sending all the presenters out to different hotspots across the state to cover what was going on. So they're going from radio to TV. Libby had a strong background in TV as well. But he didn't want to send her because he said, well, you're a comedian, like what would you know about deep, meaningful, human kind of stories, and it didn't sit well with her. So she went and pled a case, and she said, "Hey, look, I reckon I can go out and do this." And she convinced him to send her out. He then went out onto the floor and he told everybody he was sending Libby to Whittlesea. So I think what Steve did was really brave, and it showed courage as a leader. He was also being authentic to his own values and his beliefs. He admitted he was wrong because he'd already told them he wasn't sending her. He was going to leave her as an anchor. And he trusted and respected Libby to do a job. And for that trust, she did do an awesome job. She demonstrated amazing sensitivity and courage in her conversations with people who'd lost everything, including loved ones. And the Whittlesea was a really tough area. So I think that's a great. It was like I was sitting there watching the TV and I went, what a great leader. Like that's just wonderful demonstration of trusting, respecting, but also being authentic to himself, and having the courage and the vulnerability to go out there and say, I got it wrong, I'm sending her. And she did a great job. He was rewarded. And that's what I think as managers and leaders that we need to go forward with, that when we actually give people responsibility, they pay it back in spades, because they go, hey, the boss is trusting me with this. I'm off. I'm running. I guess like the other part of that question was not letting perfect get in the way of the good, and it became a bit of a catch cry when I was in Afghanistan, and we were dealing with the Afghan Air Force in the Ministry of Defence, and there was just so much stuff going on that the NATO command were not actually wanting to make decisions. So, there was a whole analysis paralysis thing going on. And so we weren't actually able to move forward with things. So I think that's where, trying to time things, trying to analyze it to the nth degree, it actually hurts more than it actually helps. And, if you have a bit of a look at what Brené talks about, she goes, she talks about the fact that perfectionism is not about self-improvement. Perfectionism at its core is about trying to get approval from people. So it's driving the wrong behavior anyway. And I really think that that's an area that we can sort of like help people that, a decision is something that the team will move on with. It doesn't always have to be the absolute perfect decision at the perfect time with all the perfect surrounds to it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Figgy. I'm going to take a time after when we finish to actually sit down and listen to everything you've said again. There's in just that pocket of information you've given us so many ways that leaders, managers, coaches can actually build engagement in the workplace. And what I'm thinking about is the coaching questions. How can we build this recognition? How can we admit that we're not right, or what do we need to talk to our teams about? There's so many, I think, in the snippets that you're saying, there's so many questions that we could be asking and reflecting on ourselves. So thank you for that.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm thinking about the lack of recognition. So one of the things that is getting in the way of engagement is this lack of recognition. And you say you really need to build engagement by recognizing your people, and the story you gave about Libby Gore is an excellent story. Recognize the person's strengths, recognize what they can contribute.
Yeah. Look, I think recognition is really, really important. And when you've got senior leaders in particular, but it doesn't matter, it's any position of power. When that person actually walks past one of the people who they might have only been there a month, 6 months, 12 months, doesn't really matter. And then you go, oh my God, the boss is coming here. And you go, hey, Mick, one, you knew their name. That's great. That's awesome, because they don't think you know their name. And then you go, I saw what you did on that, and that was a great job. Well done. And walk off. That's all you need. You don't need to have a great big long conversation necessarily with them, but that is actually really powerful. In some of the research that has been done, they've shown that by instigating or building into your workplace some form of recognition program really boosts engagement. It was done across Cisco, Intuit, a computer company, Hershey's Chocolates, and LinkedIn, and they all put in place a recognition system. Now, there's different sorts of recognition. Sometimes it might just be a certificate. Sometimes it might be a car spot that means they've just got to walk straight to the lift or whatever it might be. But most of those boosted their recognition rates in double figures. So, 10%, 11%. And that is actually really critical, because that might be the little bit that helps other people go, hey, that's pretty cool. I like that. And they become more aware of what's going on within the company. And the fact that leaders have actually started to recognize what people are doing and how they're doing it. And I think recognition was definitely one of the very common themes across the research that I looked at in relation to engagement.
Yeah, it's I was also thinking just recently, I had an interaction, and I don't mind mentioning the company, with our internet service provider Pennytel, and there was a person there that really went above and beyond to actually assist us. And given the massive issues we've had in Australia with outages, this was a few weeks ago now. We had a person who went out of their way to actually assist us. So I wrote a note and said, you're like a magician. You've gone above and beyond, and thank you for your assistance, etc. And that note actually went through to the head of customer service, and it actually went through to the CEO.
That's fantastic.
And I think what made my day was the CEO of Pennytel. He wrote to me, and he thanked me for actually writing the recognition, but he also said that he was going to go and personally thank the person on the floor in the call center that was making such a difference. And I just thought, so a shout out to Auntie at Pennytel, the chief executive officer there as well, because when leaders do that, and they are willing to take their time out of their time. It made me feel great as a customer, but I can imagine the impact on the entire call center when he goes down and actually thanks that person for their service.
Yeah, look, hey, what a wonderful example, and good on you for writing. But I think it also shows that there's a fairly flat command slash structure of management, whatever I'm not so comfortable with management. I like leadership, but it's fairly flat, that it can go from somebody who received an email to their boss and to the CEO, and then the CEO goes all the way. So I think that shows a really flexible and progressive company as well. So yeah, great example.
And the only other thing I'd like to add into that also, Figgy, and we've tested this at Air Force many times, can you go to your boss and thank your boss? I think there's something that is really missing in our workplaces today, in that bosses and managers and our leaders like the CEO here at Pennytel are doing a great job. And it doesn't hurt for everyone below them to actually say, I want to recognize your contribution, boss. And we've had a couple of examples around that recently. I wrote back to the CEO there and said, I want to acknowledge, because it's lonely at the top, I want to acknowledge that what you've done and the way that you're leading your team is something to be admired as well, because of the approach you took. So it's okay, isn't it, Figgy, to say thanks to the boss for their contribution as well,
absolutely.
not just the other way down.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's great, and there should be maybe a little bit more of it, because, like you said, sometimes life is lonely in higher up positions. I think one of the other things that goes with recognition, and in that example of going to the boss and saying, "Hey, thanks for what you're doing. You're doing a great job," is that you actually feel appreciated for what you do. So recognition is also about appreciation, and even just that. That thanks, or that's a great job. That's recognition of your contribution, and the hard work that you put in, the long hours, whatever it might be. So I think feeling part of being appreciated is really important for people. So they're the sorts of things that I think, are definite leadership lessons that we should be trying to coach when we're coaching leaders, and just raising as thought bubbles for them to sort of consider and go away with, have a bit of think about.
Yeah, thank you. And we're right on time now, Figgy. But so I will put up that summary as well. But are there any kind of we are going to ask you back. That is definitely. I think you're going to become a regular. There's no doubt about that. But are there any other kind of just thought bubbles you just wanted to finish up on? Any other key messages you want to just give us to finish off?
Oh, look, there's a lot, but we've got a weekend upon us, so maintain a work-life balance. Have stuff that's outside work, have friends that are outside work, have that balance, and create some mindful time for yourself as well. I think that's important. Sometimes that should be in your day, whether it's a walk or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've reminded us a few times about that as well. So for those of you that can capture the screen here, you can pick up those leadership lessons and the engagement lessons that we've been talking about just in a snapshot there. You can feel free to take a screenshot. And what I wanted to challenge everyone or offer everyone is to say, we've got Be Authentic. Figgy talked to us about that. But how am I being authentic? We can turn those into coaching questions. How am I being authentic? What does authentic look like? How am I showing up as authentic or authentic? So we can take these leadership lessons, the things you've shared with us around engagement, Figgy, and turn them into actually coaching questions that enable us to reflect, just like you've done here today. So on behalf of the alumni, I really want to thank you for your time, Figgy. You've taken the time out to share some of the lessons. I know we've just scratched the surface, but you've given us a lot to think about in terms of how we're building engagement in our workplace. So thanks for your leadership in this area as well. I really appreciate it.
No worries. You're very welcome.
So we do have a lot of programs coming up. Figgy mentioned the coaching culture, which is part of our diploma of organisational coaching. We've got the Cert 4 coming up, Leader as Coach, mental health first aid training, which you've been involved in as well, Figgy, delivering as well. So there's lots of opportunities to grow and develop your people, to build engagement through that as well. So you can check out our website for that as well. Once again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And I hope you can take the opportunity just to sit and reflect and listen to the podcast or listen to the webinar once again. Figgy, we will have you back. So I can't wait for that as well. Thank you so much.
No worries, Nat. I'm happy to stay here for a few minutes if anyone's got questions or anything they'd like to discuss further as well.
Lovely. Thank you.